the room out there. These are announcements for the next About Face Theater play, which I encourage you all to go to, and it's about the former president of Mongolia College. Any Mongolia grads? Oh, I'm on that.
So welcome everybody. I'm a little bit under the weather, so I'm going to do my best. There's one more seat here. Musical chairs. A lot of the stuff I'm going to mention tonight, or at least some of it, is in this book out proud in Chicago, which you can get through Women and Children First or on Amazon. It's very much a surface overview of the last 130 or so years of Chicago LGBT people. There were many of them. They didn't get covered a lot in your history books in college, but they were there. And I grew up in Chicago. I'm 55 now, so in 1980 when I was in college, when I first turned 18 years old in January of 1981, I went to a bar called OP's in downtown Des Moines, Iowa, when I was away at college. And you could go to the bars when you were 18 in Des Moines then. And it was a bar where everybody was home. It was like a Cheers for the LGBT community. There were transgender performers, there were straight wives of trans people, there were young folks like us from college, there were a lot of older couples that would come, and everybody kind of felt that was the only place we had in all of Iowa where we could feel safe. And I feel very fortunate that I came up in a very intergenerational and very multiracial community at the time when you had very few allies. You worked together to fight against the mainstream, and sometimes you lose that when you have assimilation. So in the early days of Chicago, first of all, the bar scene in Chicago has always been male-dominated, and this is predating Stonewall. Men had more money to spend. It was illegal for them to be out and single and go to places. There were some bars you couldn't even go to as a woman at all, but certainly as a single woman. So just the whole structure of mainstream society kept women out of social spaces. But there were some pioneers. I'm just going to mention a couple of them before we get into the panel tonight. One of them was called Tiny and Ruby's Gay Spot in the 1950s at 2711 South Wentworth Avenue. They said femmes and daddies, light, white, brown, and yellow, were all welcome at this place. It was started by Tiny Davis, who was a performer in the all-girl International Sweethearts of Rhythm with her partner of 40 years, Ruby Lucas. There's a great documentary about the International Sweethearts of Rhythm. Tiny and Ruby were interviewed in their North Suburban Chicago home before they passed away in the early 90s. It's a fascinating look at bar culture back then. And then in 1974, just to give you a little hint of what was around in 1970s Chicago, there was a bar called Augie's, which later merged with CK's, but at the time it was Augie's at 3729 North Halsted. Pat McCombs might give us some stories about Augie CK's. You have the Closet Bar, which is still with us today, is a lesbian-owned bar on Broadway. It's co-gender, small little neighborhood bar, but it was around in 1974. You had Jeffrey Pub, which is still with us today. It's at 7041 South Jeffrey. It's a co-gender bar. It's now, I think, the oldest bar in Chicago still existing from the early 1960s. You had Lost and Found Bar, which was at 2959 West Irving for a while. That closed only in 2008. At the time, it was one of the oldest lesbian bars in the country left. You had Ms. Bar at 661 North Clark. The Patch Bar in Calumet City. Calumet City was Sin City for the LGBT community in the 60s and 70s. That's where a lot of the women in the city went to be out and proud, because they couldn't be in the city. You had Sue and Nan's place on North Lincoln, and you had dozens and dozens of men's bars. Lost and Found is probably one of the more important bars in our legacy. It was started in 1965 by Shirley Christensen, and then her partner continued the bar after Shirley died. Marge Summit, who was on a recent panel at Kristen's, had his and hers bar until it was gentrified out of the Cubs neighborhood. Paris Dance, applaud if you heard of Paris Dance or went to Paris Dance. That bar didn't last that long, but in the scheme of lesbian bars, it was a very long time, like dog years. It was a great bar at 1122 West Montrose, had parking, it had benefits, it had lots and lots of things, and then they sold it to a developer. But it was a great bar while it lasted, and nobody has really recreated what Paris had going for it. Stargaze tried and lasted for quite some time in Andersonville, That was a really important long-term bar. Many, many community benefits and events were held there. We still have Big Chicks with us, which is owned by a woman and has been part of the LGBT community for decades. Really, really important bar. And we do actually have 2 women's bars that are everyday women's bars in Chicago right now. We have Spinners at 4623 Northwestern, and we have Forest View Lounge in Forest Park. One of the co-founders died a few months ago, but her partner is still continuing it. So we do actually have 2 women's bars. And at any one time in Chicago's history, it's a misnomer to think there were dozens of bars for women. There were never dozens of bars for women at any one time. And women didn't go out 7 days a week, so it was a huge struggle for anybody that tried to do it 7 days a week. And then, as was referenced by Kim, women, when they get into a relationship, they don't go out and they don't spend money the same way. They don't make money the same way, but even if they do, they don't spend it the same way that men do. And even men's bars are struggling with because of different dating ways now. So what I kind of wanted to get out was it was important, it was great, but don't romanticize it. It's hard work doing promotions in bars of whatever era you were in, and it's easier now to get these things going. What we need is better cross-promotion beyond people's own circles of friends, beyond Facebook, and consistency. That's what will get people to know and kind of establish things for the long haul. So we've got a huge panel for you tonight. This was a big challenge. I did not put the panel together. I'm not, so I'll take the heat for Vivian. But, oh my God, this is, never done this before. Yeah, we're actually just going to sing. It's just going to be a chorus tonight, okay? No speaking. So what we're going to try to do is keep people to like 2 minutes or so per answer. I'm asking only about 3 or 4 kind of open-ended questions. Take them in the directions you want. We'll try to keep it to 2 or 3 minutes. And then Vivian's going to have index cards where people can ask questions if you have them. So I'm going to breeze through these bios. And I'm also, if I miss anything that's really important, just make sure to say it in your presentation. But we've got a lot of folks here. And just, I really appreciate you guys coming out on a Friday night to talk about spaces like this. It's very important that we get together like this. So Alma is Izquierdo. I'm going to say I messed it up. I was practicing it. But, has been part of Chicago's LGBT community since the 80s and became very active part of the social scene not long after, with taking on leadership of Amigas Latinas, sitting on the Center of Halsted's Women's Action Committee, to spearheading Clandestina events with fellow panelist Brooke Webster. Alma, if you want to raise your hand. Amie Klujian, down here. 15 years ago, Amie and Christina Roberts founded Backlot Bash, which has grown to be one of the nation's largest lesbians events and an iconic staple every Chicago Pride. Last year, HRC honored Backlot Bash with their esteemed Chicago Community Service Award in recognition of their efforts to promote participation and create lesbian spaces. In 2017, Amie was selected to appear in Go Magazine's 100 Women We Love issue. We have Bree Baim, president of Black Thread Agency, a culture, marketing, and events company based here in Chicago. BTA is the founder of the queer women's event brand called Peach, which successfully launched last year in Chicago. Peach team includes 2 amazing Chicago event curators, Hannah Vitti, who's bartending tonight, I believe, and Morgan Higgins. Peach's goal is to create a purposeful and well-curated experiences that elevate programming and break down venue barriers. Brooke Webster. Yeah, 24 years old. That was a few years ago. Webster started throwing a Saturday night party called Meow Mix in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, which featured live bands and hip-hop, breakbeat, rock and roll, DJs, burlesque, go-go queers, and cutting-edge fundraising events. The owner offered it to Webster to buy, and she did, with savings from the party, working a full-time job, and getting an investor. It ran for 10 years. In Chicago, Brooke partnered with fellow panelist Alma to make Clandestina a reality. Her background also includes working in El Salvador against the U.S.-funded war in that country, which was my favorite part of your bio. We have Elena Sotirin. Elena runs Lesbian events and is passionate about unifying and celebrating the lesbian community. Lezbe strives to provide an inclusive, welcoming space that is accessible to a broad audience to encourage new connections. Eva Castro, aka DJ Castro of Castro Entertainment, has been a DJ with community for over 25 years. Eva has been a resident at Grand Caribe, Winners, Rainbow Room, Stargaze, and many others. Guest spots at August CK, Circuit, and Hydrate. Eva is the first lesbian and Latinx DJ in Chicago radio mix show history to be featured in a corporate radio station. We have Jenae Williams. Once named a Chicago Cultural Queer Curator by Time Out Chicago, Jenae works to create experiences centered around exuberance while enacting a social responsibility to the Chicago LGBTQA community. Starting from roots at the edge of Boys Town at Lakeview Broadcasting Company to hosting events in California, Texas, and Michigan, Jenae and CDG have introduced global musicians, artists, and creatives to the queer scene. Four more. Kristen Kaza, a culture producer and self-described party mom of the LGBTQ plus community, most widely known for her 12-year career producing parties with a purpose across Chicago. It's Slow-Mo, Slow Jams for Queer Fam, one of Chicago's longest-running and award-winning queer dance party series, known for its inclusiveness and joy-generating vibes. We have Pat McCombs, the legend, introduced into the Chicago LGBT Hall of Fame in 2000. Pat is a veteran organizer with over 4 decades of social and lesbian event organizing. Besides co-founding... I'm almost there with you. Besides co-founding Executive Suite, a traveling club for women of color, she assisted the Michigan Women's Music Festival for decades and has helped to lead several lesbian and African American organizations. Renauda Riddle, co-chair of the Women's Action Committee at Center Halsted. She sits on the executive board of Legacy Project as treasurer, also as the co-founder of RR, which curates BrunchRemixed and CocktailRemixed. Renauda has a continued history of partnering with women-driven organizations to build long-lasting relationships throughout the city community. And last but not least, Tamara, the co-founder of B.BLYSS, a diversity-based marketing events and entertainment company with a primary focus on servicing the needs of women, people of color, and the LGBTQA community. But last but not least, a long-term member of the Women's Action Committee here at Center and Halsted. Wow. What an amazing group of people. So I want to just start with, if each of you can talk about the kind of events you create and why you do it. And if it's in the past, talk about what your motivations were in the past. We'll get to kind of the future in a little bit, so kind of what you're doing now and what brought you to that. I'd like to start with Pat, though, because you're no. The classiest, the one that started it really all, I think, in terms of floating parties around Chicago. There were always bars, but the way you did it, I think, was inspiring and inspirational to many people on the panel. So maybe start with what motivated you to do what you did, and what did you do?
Can you hear me?
No.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I think I started through a protest because of a protest at August and CK's. They discriminated against women of color, not all of us. They had a certain quota for a number of women of color to enter the bar. For instance, if I came to the bar and it was 4 of us, maybe 2 of us would be able to get in and the other 2 wouldn't. So of course we would leave. And if they had a certain quota of women that were in the bar, women of color, they didn't let us in. The only reason we wanted to go to the bar was really because of the music. Because most of the time, most of the bars on the north side, when we decided to come, if they didn't have the right kind of music, they didn't have to worry about women of color coming. But since they had a woman of color DJ, and she played nice music, we decided to start going. And this created a problem with them having so many of us in the bar at the same time. So this made me decide to start having social gatherings for women of color. which is a whole nother story. But we decided to start having parties, and we would travel around to different bars in the area and start giving parties for women of color. And anybody could come. It's just that it was focused on women of color because we didn't have anywhere to go. And that's how I started. But everybody came.
The protest started in the mid-1970s is when that was happening.
Right, that started in the 70s, and it was a challenge, but we prevailed, as that's another story. I don't want to talk too much because it's a lot of information. And it's a lot of people up here. So that's how I started.
Am I the next oldest? How I started? Well, just a little history for the LGBT case. The first time I went in there, I was 14 years old, and I had a fake ID. And for me, I didn't know a lot of the rules when I was around that age. And in school, there were girls that you talked to, what have you, but you wanted to be somewhere where it was more of you. So we used to bribe the girl at the door, and they would let us in. So it was a great time, and they played a couple of Latin songs, which was great for us. Moving forward from there, as I got older and became a DJ in my late teens, I was always connected to music. I was always doing my own parties, looking for places to do things so we could hear more of our own music as well. With me, I grew up with the best of both worlds. I grew up in Humboldt Park, and I knew my own music as well as the music that I grew up around, whether it was R&B or hip-hop or house or rock or what have you, and kind of just smashed those two together. Before I was at Stargaze, I used to go to Paris, and all of those clubs were great experiences for me. I met my wife at August CK's. Now, when I finally got to DJ for CK's and I was of age, I was there through a promoter, because at the time, it was towards when they were already closing and things of that nature. Moving ahead, I played at Winners, which was owned by Lynn. She used to own Girl Bar in Halsted. Then I was at Rainbow Room, and then I found a home with Stargaze. Mimi was she's still with us. She wasn't able to make it here today for personal things that she had to take care of. But Stargaze was home to many of us. It's just like on Cheers. It's the place where everyone knew your name, right? And to us, we called her Mama Bear. She would hear problems. She would take care of whoever came to her for any kind of help. She took care of them. And when I got there through a promoter. And when the promoter didn't work out, she was like, "Oh, you're coming with me?" I'm like, "Well, no, I'm not." And it made me like my work, so she kept me. So we kept her for 11 and a half years. Once she closed, I just kind of kept it going. With me, it's always been about music. I'm a DJ, and I had to put on a promoter hat in order to keep that going. So as the years progressed, I just kept building a fan base, and I called it Spanglish because I don't want to limit it just to Latin women. It's for everybody. So we played English and Spanish music, and that's where Spanglish came from. So that's it. That's pretty much all I have to say. I'm a little nervous. So. Next.
Hi. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay, awesome. So, Riddle. I started basically from By Women for Women. I was curating events, leading that committee. And so someone was just saying, they'll text me or call me and say, "Renauda, what are you doing this weekend?" And I would say, "Oh, I'm going to do this brunch. I'm going to, meet this person for cocktails." And they'll be like, "Okay, can I come along too?" So every weekend it seemed like someone was, texting me or calling me and saying, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend?" So I thought to myself, okay, so I have all these people that I've already nurtured these relationships through By Women for Women at the Center on Halsted. Why don't I start an events company? And so that's what I did. So I started BrunchRemixed, CocktailRemixed. And I've been doing it for the last 2 years. I've been doing By Women for Women, leading that committee for almost 10 years now. And it seems like every year I say, I am not going to lead this committee anymore. I complain to Tico, and every year somehow I'm still leading the committee. But that's a little, and also I think for me, as you get a certain age, you don't want to go out late. So that's another reason. So, you know, BrunchRemixed starts at 12 o'clock. And it, yeah, right? Yeah. And it ends at 4 p.m. And usually we'll go, you know, get some cocktails and I'm in bed by 8. You know? and then CocktailRemixed, you know, starts at 6, it ends at 9 o'clock. So it's more for the professional woman who wants to just hang out and be, you know, in a space with beautiful women who also share the same sexuality as we share. So that's my skill.
Hi, Kristen, Kaza. I started a party called Slow Jams for Queer Fam 7 years ago, which is hard to believe. Same thing, we're like, I'm done, and then keep doing it. And I felt, I worked in event production and been sort of, I guess, in nightlife for a long time, but like to be in bed by a certain hour, cannot rave to the wee hours. And so I wanted to be, I personally wanted to be in a space where the vibes were a little bit sexier, the mood and the music was a little more mid-tempo so that you could have a conversation, or you could dance if you wanted to. And I'm really passionate about music, a town crier, so it's really important to me, and I wanted to play more R&B from back in the day, and from the 70s and 80s. Big fan of Sade and Anita Baker and all that good stuff. So that's how Slow Jams for Queer Fam came to be. And to create a space that was a little bit more focused on the vibe and the music. And while it has always like centralized queer women through the DJs that we book and performances for the most part, I've always tried to create a welcoming space so that advocates and other folks feel welcome too, and to focus more on positivity and a joy-generating space. We start at 9, which is not 10 or 11 or 12, but people get there sometimes even at 8 because it's a small space, but have expanded to do other events, keeping in mind this you know, thing that I think a lot of women have in common, which is that you wanting to go to bed earlier, or having commitments the next day, or wanting something that's a little bit more low-key. So we've done Slow Jams yoga, which we do on the regular at my studio reunion. We've done concerts, and we've done 5K runs, trying to provide things that are not just so nightlife centered for women and their friends to get together.
Hi. Believe it or not, I inherited my love for socializing and entertaining and dancing from my parents. They are in their 80s and they still party. So when I was in high school, that's when it started. Like, I wanted to throw a party, and I went to an all-girls high school, which helped. But I literally would throw a party for my birthday every year, and I would invite every single person I knew. So, you know, a Mexican tradition is to have a quinceañera. I invited my entire high school class to my parents' house for a quinceañera. They didn't have, you know, they didn't do one for me. And so that's how my love for organizing parties started. It was really based on my role models, my parents. And so as I graduated from high school and then college, I continued to throw these parties. And when I entered the LGBTQ community and started to meet more and more people, and I would go to the bars that were in existence at the time. And when I noticed something like what Pat was mentioning, it was very kind of segregated. You know, it was either all the African American community or the sporty bikes, you know, or whatever. But it was all separate, right? It was all separate. But when I would have my birthday parties or a party, I invited everybody that I knew. So little by little, people were like, "Oh my God, this was such a great party, Alma. There was such a diverse crowd," and that was my passion. My passion was to bring everybody together. I want to party with everybody. I don't care what your background is, where you're from, so long as you love, you know, to dance, as long as you love the people that are around you, you treat them with love and respect, and you have a good time, you know, come on over. And that's what I started when I would send invites. That's what I said. If you have a positive attitude and a love for dancing and socializing, come on by. You know, if you're not that way, you're still invited if you tone it down, you know. But so that's how I started throwing parties. And then little by little, people in the community, nonprofit organizations, businesses, other party promoters started to approach me and said, hey, Alma, could you help me promote my business or promote my party or whatever? And I loved it. I loved it. And I think one of the universal things so far is that people are throwing their parties because of the passion that they have, whether it's for the music or the people or whatever. And my passion was people and the diversity in our community, and it still is. So, you know, when Brooke and I and Monica started Clandestina, one of the things that we continued to hear was, my God, I love this crowd because it's a diverse crowd. You know, and I hope and pray that we continue to do that because that's a passion for me. I'm not doing it as much anymore because of my job, but I will continue as long as I can. So, thank you.
So I also went to Augie and CK's with a fake ID when I was 15. I grew up in Chicago, but I moved to New York in my early 20s. So I remember having that feeling actually going to Augie and CK's and being like, oh my God, this is amazing. There's all these women that have the same feelings that I do, and this is okay here, and I feel free. And I think we've all had that feeling at one time or another. And so when I moved to New York, and I loved all the things about New York that we all fall in love with when we go to a different city, and especially like New York City, I felt like when I went out to a LGBT space, I felt free to be queer, but I didn't hear necessarily the music I wanted to hear. And that's been a theme for all of us, I think, the music. I felt like it was the same remix, the same beat. And so when we started B.BLYSS, it really was this thing, the group of us, we got together and I said, let's start something that's completely different. So we were punk rock, we were hip hop, we were spoken word nights, we were everything that wasn't the typical LGBT space. And it started as a night and it took off so quickly that within 6 months we were a 7-day-a-week space for 10 years. People I'm sure here know who Rudy Giuliani is. He ruined that for a lot of, not only is he completely insane, and he ruined New York nightlife forever, and Bloomberg continued that. But one of the things he did with cabaret laws in New York was a law that was put on the book in the 20s and 30s that was a racist law to stop jazz clubs in Harlem, had never been enforced up until the time Giuliani decided to enforce it. And the way he decided to enforce it was to go after queer clubs, people of color clubs, anything that wasn't what he wanted to sell to real estate people. And these were, if you could imagine, these were every Friday and Saturday night we would have a raid of a group of agencies that were pretty much all men with flashlights, fire marshals, and it would always happen around midnight. We were till 4 a.m. every night. If you think that you get 10 men with flashlights writing tickets for anybody dancing in almost any neighborhood, is going to kill your party. That will kill your party, even if they're only there for a half an hour. And so that was a battle that we all fought in New York, and a lot of club owners and bar owners, and just recently the mayor there, Bill de Blasio, ended the cabaret laws. So that's really important for New York City. But that led to the demise and the closing of B.BLYSS, and we built a bigger space in Brooklyn called Caddyshack. I don't know if any of you remember Brooklyn, but I had that for 5 years, and then I got a little burnt out because, as Tracy mentioned, you did see this sort of path of you would see your regulars every night, twice, 3 times a week, and then she would meet somebody, and then I'd be like, where's the 3 margaritas and 1 shot of tequila regular? Well, we haven't seen her for 2 years. And then all of a sudden you would see her back and be like, well, I'm single again. And so, that's one thing that, that led to some, the challenges of keeping a place open. But I think it's also, we make less money. It's harder for us to go out every night. But, also creating a situation where people support each other is really important, and not having divisions within promoters and and coming together, I think, is really important. And I see that love in Chicago amongst this group of people and the promoters, which is really fantastic. And also being able to come to Chicago and being approached by Monica and getting together with Alma to do something really cool was a very special thing for me coming home. I think Chicago is an amazing place to be queer, and I think everybody on this panel has done really amazing work to keep open spaces. And you know, in the end, we're always a community center, whether we're a 7-day-a-week party or we're a promoted night. We are always the ones throwing the benefits and supporting each other. And so in some ways, when you're looking at our business model, it is always about our community and how we support each other.
Hi everyone, my name is Amie Klujian, and I co-founded Backlot Bash with Christina Roberts. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you guys for being here, and it's great to share the stage with everyone. So thank you all for everything you do. We started Backlot Bash 15 years ago, basically to create a space that was safe and inclusive for women as an alternative to the Pride celebrations that were happening in Boys Town. So that was really the impetus of creating an event that was dynamic, featured female artists, whether emerging or established, and allowed people from Chicago and neighboring suburbs really initially to come together, celebrate, acknowledge our past, and enjoy the present. Our mission really has evolved over the years as the event grew from a really organic, sort of greedy Chicago event to slowly more and more people coming. And the timing of our event is right around when the Supreme Court makes some major decisions. You know, just having a politics background and interest, and Christina as well, we started to get more and more involved in engaging our Backlot Bash community into things that happen throughout the year, whether it's helping get a bus to go to the Capitol to lobby for gay marriage rights in Illinois, or other things. We've kind of, feel good about those types of contributions. And so, in a way, our event means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, because we are a community of an LGBTQ community. Everyone is in a different process in their life. They may need different things from the community at different times, and we find that, we hope that Backlot Bash offers, morsels of satisfaction for anyone, no matter what their stage might be in their coming out process. Even for me, when I started Backlot Bash, I was not out to my family. I was out to my friends and coworkers, and as it grew, it was like, oh man, I can't, it's hard to, it was a little hard to not be 100% authentic to my own family. And so probably midway through is when I came out to my family, and we hear comments like that from Backlot Bash attendees. They may be out to their family, but they can't be out at work. So like Tracy was saying, they were going from Chicago to Calumet City to be free. We find that we have a lot of attendees that come in to Backlot Bash to feel 100% whole and free. And it's a very fulfilling feeling. They might be teachers and they can't be out at work or whatever it is. It's a special thing for a lot of people, and it's a very special event that we hope continues to resonate with the community.
So I'm Bree Berry. I'm part of the Peach team with Morgan Higgins and Hannah Vivi. So we are the newbies on the block for sure. So it's kind of awesome being on the stage with a bunch of legends and people who have been in the game for so long. The story of Peach basically started with Black Girl Agency, a company that I started here in Chicago. I've been in Chicago for about 3 years now. And the first year when I first moved here, I was having friends visiting, and I didn't know anyone when I first moved to Chicago. And it was the first thing where it was like, where do I go? Where are the women? Where are the spots I'm supposed to be, So it was trying to navigate that and having a lot of friends that were coming into town, like, what am I doing this weekend? And I didn't necessarily always have answers. So I decided, okay, is there something that we could do? So I brought it to my team, and I was like, I think we need to do something for queer women here in Chicago. The first thing was like, okay, let's build a team. So Hannah, Vivian, and we were working on her app team. We did a brief little stint with them, and we worked really well together. And so I brought her on the team, and then we got another member where I went to Boys Town and I saw a POC bartender behind them. And I was like, I gotta talk to this person. And that was Morgan Higgins. And I remember, like, it's actually a really funny story. I was just like shooting questions at them about a bunch of different things. I thought they were gonna kick me out of the bar. But to ask them a bunch of questions, and I thought, they brought really good perspective to the team as well. So then it was like Hannah, Morgan, and I, we had never worked together, we never really hung out together, kind of just coming together to do this event. And the purpose of Peach really is just three things. I can really chalk it up to, like, one, diversity, having something where, and I think everyone's kind of talked about it on the panel so far, is, having something that goes beyond just race, being able to touch different incomes in different areas of the city. That was a big thing for me, of we saying, different parties in different areas, but trying to bring everyone together and choosing different locations. From, backgrounds to education, so that was a big thing for us. Second was, being able to give back. So every single event, we actually partner with a non-for-profit, and this year I'm really excited. Because we're going to be giving up to almost $4,000 to each total of the series, $1,000 each charity. We have the opportunity to do that this year. So that's a really big thing for us to make sure that we just did it for our air launch event that was April 28th at the Ace Hotel. Every $5 if you drank a Tito's drink went towards Howard Brown, so $1,000 donated to Howard Brown. And then another thing is going to be the idea of breaking down venue barriers and trying to travel around the city. Again, I like good cocktails. I like to go wherever, and safety is always been an issue and things that we always have to think about when planning. I always like to say we want to make unfamiliar places feel familiar for everybody. So the idea of breaking down barriers, going into W Hotel, going into, Ace Hotel is usually really progressive, but going into Cambria Hotel and all these other different bars and having some of these difficult conversations, having conversations like gender neutral bathrooms, having conversations like talk to your staff in regards to how you're dealing with queer women. And what's interesting is a lot of these places that I've worked with, they haven't had these conversations before. So it's the idea of kind of knocking down those barriers and starting to open up conversations so that the next queer group that goes in there, or the next queer wedding, or business, that it's not unfamiliar territory. So it's also educating those venues as we go.
My name is Jenae Williams. I am the local. I've been around. Not like that. But I have. I snuck in the Stargaze a whole bunch. Only when like certain people were working though. And actually I know one of the old security guards, and I see her and she's like, "You were that girl." It's the same with the closet with Tabitha. She's like, "I never let you in." I'm like, "I know, but now I'm old." You have to. But no, I loved sneaking into bars because I was a young lesbian in this city. I'm sorry, I came out. Me and my friends, DJ All the Way K, who I think has DJ'd everybody's party on this like panel at least once. We were best friends when we were 14. So we were young, we were gay, we knew it, and we wanted to be out and accepted. So we would walk around Boys Town, we would get to know who was what and figure things out. And when we became of age-ish, we started to throw an event. So we started LBC, Lakeview Broadcasting Company, Dirty Girl Thursdays. But no, we did that for as long as it could thrive, for 3 or 4 years, and then we went on to Berlin. But also, like as everyone knows, Kaza has gone on to have a very thriving DJ career, and it's really because of this community. It's because of everyone on the stage. Like I've always described the Chicago lesbian scene as a really beautiful hobo. It's that real cute bitch. You kind of see her in one apartment, but then maybe next time you see her in another apartment, and then maybe like sometimes she might be in Michigan. You just really never know where she is because she's so cute and creative. You can't keep hold of her unless you have like her MySpace, I'm old, Instagram, phone number, burner. But if you got that host burner phone, then you can keep touch with it. But that's the whole point of Chicago lesbian, queer communities. If you keep a hold of us and you have our numbers, there is always something going on, whether we want to admit it or not. It could be on the south side, like that's what you got to do if you want to go to Jeffrey Pub. I have had a lot of fun there. I've also had to drive back to the north side, but like that's the thing. If you are willing to take a chance on us, we have always been willing to take a chance on you. So I really respect and admire everyone for getting us together tonight, for having the opportunity to tell everybody that we're still here.
My name is, can you all hear me? Mm-hmm. Yeah. My name is Tamara Allen. I'm with B.BLYSS. A lot of people don't even know what B.BLYSS means. It's an acronym that means bi, curious, bisexual, lesbian, yes, simply sexy. Yes, no one's ever known that. But it also means be happy too. B.BLYSS started because I was actually writing a book. I was in college at Northern Illinois University, and I was traveling back and forth to Chicago, and I actually was on a journey of self-discovery. So I was writing about something that I didn't know what I was writing about. I was writing about a club scene. And I was like, okay, I really don't even know if this is really how this is. I should probably go see about it. So the first place I ended up going to was Berlin. And I walked into Berlin, and it was a midweek. I had on stiletto heels, and I'm like already 6 feet tall without my heels. So when I walked in, someone walked up to me and literally put their hand on my neck. And I said, okay, I guess this isn't the right place for me right now. So I started going to out to other venues, and I never really saw what I had envisioned in my mind. So what happened is that I started getting onto social media, which was like Black Planet at the time, because B.BLYSS has been around since 2004. And I started talking to someone on Black Planet, and I was saying how I had an interest in producing events, and I knew no one in Chicago because I was still living in DeKalb. I am from Chicago. I grew up on the south side, so Auburn Gresham, if you all are familiar with that area. I've been here my whole life. But someone introduced me to Sandra Suave. Sandy and I started producing events, but our thought was, one of the things that we kept noticing is that there were not spaces. So part of what Bree was speaking about is venue barriers. It was so important to us to break barriers down for people of color, for women, and also really educate people about the things that, who we were, because all of the things that we were seeing in terms of imagery, where it came from, different media sources, it was just not what we thought it should be in terms of how our story was being told. And so that was so important to us. So everything that we developed in terms of our marketing materials was very focused on a particular way and brand. And we got a lot of flack for that. People called us bougie and but we were really trying to go into venues that, you would not expect us to be in. So we were in House of Blues. We were, doing Chemistry Fridays. We started at a huge nightclub. And chemistry means the intense chemistry between women. We create words. So this, we do that because it's important to build this community and give it a voice. And so we've continued to do things that are more in a sense of arts and focused on teaching. So we've done a literary arts and jazz series. We've done book clubs. We do a lot of different things that are really speaking to the needs of the community. And when I started this, I was only 23, and my mother did not want me doing any of this. She still doesn't. So I have to keep my identities in different places. My family's always saying something because I come from a very conservative background. But at the end of the day, what I have learned from this community is that our stories matter and who we are matter. And there's been so much that has happened in terms of, there's been a lot of gain. There's also been a lot of loss. I have grown up doing this work. And everyone here has taught me something. You know, when I remember meeting Pat and I went to a graduation party and I sat down in this room with all of these elders and they sat me in the middle and they just told me this about my, you know, this is how your life is going to be. And it's felt very funny how I've stepped away a little bit to do more consulting and things like that. But last week I went to a drum circle party. And those same people, those same women were there. And it was almost like I was staring right back at my life all over again. And so what you have to know is that this community is vast in terms of its knowledge, in terms of its history. And there's a lot of things that you should be proud about, your own journeys and also what we've done. So I applaud you women for being here. There are a lot of other people that are doing things as well in the community that are not on this stage, and I want to thank them too. So.
Hard to follow everybody and all of that. I'm Elena Sotirin. I run Lesbian events. Also a newer face up on stage. So first of all, I'm so honored to be here and bow down to all of these women up here running things for so long. I'm learning something new every single day by attending all of these great events and by learning from the people on stage now and people who are not on stage too. Lesbian events really started, and my motivation behind Lezbe really comes from the sense of acceptance that I felt from the community. And my motivation there is to bring that sense of acceptance to a broader audience and to more people. I want to really help people tap into the people on stage and the things that are going on in the community in Chicago, and really provide that visibility and sense of importance of spotlighting the lesbian community. We deserve a space, and we're going to make it, and there's lots going on, and I want to help people tap into that, and really make an accessible way to tap into that, and cross-promote and network with everybody up here and everything that's going on. So, aside from that, he doesn't like to party, so Lesbe's been doing Flannel Fridays for a little over a year now, and it's grown much more than I expected it to, so I know that there's a need and a desire for everything that we're doing, and there's so much going on, and such a diverse sense of community. There's a lot everybody's doing in their own motivation and their own personalities that come out in all of our events, and I think that's important for everybody to see and to acknowledge and to kind of bring together. So a sense of community is really what is the motivation behind Lezbe, and that accessibility to the network.
So that was question number one. It's going to be a lesbian lockdown. We're going to be here till midnight. And then we're going to have another panel at midnight for the 21-year-olds. So one of the things that people always ask is, why can't we sustain stuff? Even the most successful bars, well, Lost and Found is an exception, but it was a little neighborhood bar that you had a buzz to get in, even as late as when it closed in 2008, you still had to be buzzed to get in the bar. And there were older women that had seats, and if you took their seats, you were told to leave. So it had its own little charm, but it was a very small little bar. And part of the reason gay bars in general have moved around for decades in different parts of the city is money. When gay bars on Halsted finally started to buy the properties they're in, they stayed. Bars like Sidetrack and Roscoe's, they own their businesses. So they aren't going to be, well, they might be property taxed out eventually, but in terms of their control of their own destiny, owning those buildings, like Stargaze didn't own that building. And so your destiny is limited. You go into an area that's kind of up and coming, you can afford it, and then boop, you're out. And so sustainability of parties, I don't know any bar owner in the lesbian community that ever's been wealthy because of that. They may have made a living, they may have paid some people, but just like as in the newspaper world, you don't get rich doing that. We shouldn't begrudge people that are successful, though. And sometimes I think there's other people that say, well, you're making money off the community. Well, are you going to prefer to give your money to straight people? I mean, we shouldn't judge success either. And one of the things I'd like to talk about is how do you financially make this happen? You can be as forthright as you want to, You can be as sad story as you want to, but I think there's probably people here that want to know how you do what you do. And if it's 2 parties a year or 2 parties a week, how do you sustain that? Brooke, you did it for a long period of time in New York, of all places. What is that magic mix that you might give advice to people? Again, 2 minutes or so of advice you might give to somebody out there on how you've done it. And it could be that your motivation started one way and thought it was going to be financially successful. But then when it wasn't, you still found a way to sustain. That it still kept you motivated for other reasons. So let's start in the back row first this time. And
Well, I think Pat actually,
we'll go with that.
Testing.
Well, part of it is, I think, you have to learn how to be a really good negotiator. One of the things that we made sure that we did when we started out was not spend a lot of money. We looked at this as like more a service. So we really, basically, Sandy and I, we said, when we go into these venues, we have to negotiate no bar guarantees. Part of it is because understanding that women do not drink as much as men do. And we never wanted alcohol to be our main thing either. We didn't want anybody walking out of our parties not being able to function, getting into accidents, all of that. So that was part of our negotiating strategy. We would always say, look, this is how this works. We had a formula. We really broke it down. We were very business oriented and had proposals and all kinds of things, but also showed them that we're going to make sure this is safe, and this is an audience that you want in your circle because we become loyal. If you are doing the right things, then we will support you. If you're not doing the right things, guarantee we will not. So that is also something that we wanted to make sure of. So being crafty, we got a street team. We actually had 6 women that worked with us. We actually paid for their wardrobe. They had, there was a lot that went into that, but we made sure that they had everything that they needed because we needed to make sure that we had a voice. One thing that we realized starting out was that not every venue was going to like looking at us. So if I walked in a venue, not everyone, I can speak over the phone, my voice may sound one way, but then when I get in front of them, they may not want me there. And so we actually had to have individuals within our street team, which was very diverse. We had every spectrum of the rainbow there. So walk into the venue. We went into Chinatown. We had someone that was Asian. And unfortunately, that's how people do things. And it's very sad, but that's how you break down barriers. You put one person in place, and then the next one, you bring a whole lot of other folks, and they'll see, this is not how I envisioned them to be. And so when we talk about money, it was all about how can we make sure that we use our resources, social media, using flyers that were like $50, getting 5,000 of those and walking them. We literally walked night and day to venues to talk to people. It was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But at the end of the day, we kept our dollars low and made sure that our price points were low as well for the community as well. So.
Which order we were going in?
You're going to self-select.
Well, I think there's 2 different questions here. Definitely buy real estate. Buy that real estate. I lost McCombs partially because the neighborhood changed and the mayor was raiding everybody, but also because I didn't know my own space. And the landlord I originally dealt with was older. His son took over, and the East Village at that time started changing, and he got greedy. And he thought, well, this lesbian is successful in this space. I'm gonna make a lot of money in this space. And so when it was time to renew my lease after 10 years, he decided that he was gonna raise the rent 3 times, 300%, which I'm not an idiot, so I'm not gonna try to pay something that's not gonna be fiscally responsible and we're not gonna be able to function. And so we moved to Brooklyn. And I think that's one of the things that I learned even after closing Caddyshack. I will never ever open a 7-day place that I don't own the property. And so I think it's really important as we go forward, as people get together and you're doing cooperative things, buy the property before you invest a lot of money in a space. As a promoter, the hard thing is to prove to, and I'm on the other side of it now too in the business I'm in. I ran Dusix and Talia Hall and Punch House for 2 years, and now I'm the general manager of City Winery. And on the other side of it, when you look at things and you're deciding what parties to bring in, you're looking at finances, and everybody's looking at finances, and they see a lesbian promoter come in and they say, well, the bar ring's going to be low, or the crowd's going to leave early, or whatever their preconceived notions are. And I think some of the ways that you get around that is partnerships with companies that we respect and we love and that are good to our community. Some of the ways that we did Clandestina is that we were able to offer free parties and open bars for the first hour, and cheaper prices for cocktails because we had good partnerships, and we were able to get companies that we appreciated to donate product, which doesn't always have to be alcoholic. It can be also a great local soda maker or a regional soda maker. It can be a chef that's trying out a preparation of something who really wants to promote that. And I think that, you know, there's creative ways to be able to fund our parties, but also to be able to prove that this is going to be a quality situation to bring to spaces and to have those relationships. And one of the ways that I try to bridge that gap is in my restaurant hospitality world, and when I'm wearing that hat, is to be able to open up spaces to our community and use that power that we have. So identify who we know in a bank, or who works for an airline, or works for a magazine that wants to cross-promote with us, and that can offset some of those prices so that we can fill a space and make it accessible for everybody. You know, I don't want people not to come out because they can't afford the event, you know, but it's also, in the end, it's business, so you have to balance those two things. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges for us, that people right away when you walk in, I think that we're not going to spend the dollars, and we're not going to have those big bar rings. And I think there's other ways we can creatively make sure that that is good for the business, the small business person, and also good for the community and good for everybody that does stuff together. I mean, I think probably after this night, we probably should all just throw a huge party together. And we can fight about the finances of that, but maybe Southwest needs some good promotion. Maybe they want to fund a party for us right now, Southwest Airlines.
So I just want to say something real quick, because I always have these conversations about, you know, are women going to really spend $1 for a ticket? I feel like if you give them a quality event, they're going to spend the money. A lot of times we go into spaces, and before I say that, Brooke, Alma, I think all of us know someone who works somewhere that always connects us with something. And also, I know for me, because I work so much with the community, I do the Baim Before Women events, and I work with a lot of other nonprofits, so I already have relationships with different bars and different venues. Usually, you know, our crowd, they come in because they're from 26 to probably 65. So they have the money. I mean, we'll have a bar that, you know, it'll start at like, okay, the owner will look at me and he'll be like, okay, it's $50 right now, Renauda, what's going on? I said, just wait. All you have to do is wait. They're gonna come in and they're gonna spend the money. The only thing I know is, I guess I'm the rarity a little bit, because the only thing I have to prep an owner on is, or, you know, the manager, general manager, is like, we have one person and she's a judge. And literally every time she comes, she gets a little bit intoxicated and she buys someone a drink, and then she forgets her credit card. It never fails. Like, that's the only thing that I have. Because usually, I mean, for me, I have to say lesbians do spend money. They do have money. It's just where they want to spend it at. I think, you know, now. I'm going to say now.
Renauda, I actually agree. I think if you stay relevant, and that sometimes is what's hard to do with so many options, which is a wonderful thing. We love options. You just have to find ways to stay relevant, don't take huge risks, but take risks, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, because you learn from them, and you do it better the next time, or you just get more creative. And I think it's about balance too, like, you know, having different types of offerings. At least I can speak for our event. You know, like our family day for LGBTQ families and their kids. It's free for the community. You know, our other events are paid, you know, you pay to get in and have a nice time. So it really depends, I think, on what your goals are, and always be true to them, and just throw an honest event that's relevant to people and at different price points, you know, is what we try to do. And yeah, there's a lot of risk. We have a weather factor with our event. One rainy day and it's like a whole year of effort that can, whatever, it is what it is. We love what we do and we'll continue to do it. But it's don't be afraid to take chances, take small risks, and sponsorships help. There's no way we could do our event without the support of sponsors, and frankly our friends who help us out with their time and energy to make it work. So tap into your friends and don't be afraid to take any chances.
I think it's interesting because a lot of bars and brands, they want the queer dollar, and they know now that it's very important to have diverse programming, staff, etc. But so we have that now. There isn't that resistance in that sense, but it sometimes stops there, and some of that has to do with an sort of education issue, and also the fact that the brands, the bars, you know, the institution, etc. They're thinking about them, their dollar, as Brooke said, or their image, and they're like, oh look, we have this panel, and look how diverse it is. But sometimes it stops there, and so that's why us, as being in between as these liaisons, really have to do the work to educate them to understand the value, and that they need to step up to the plate. And stepping up to the plate, they get that exposure. They get to have those photos. They get to say, look at all these people we had here. We're going to be in the ads, probably also not with permission. That's happened. I've seen that to many people, myself included, in the time they, you know, to show the diversity that they have with that. And so I think it's taking that step further and showing the importance. You know, I always say, like, exposure is not a currency, right? We need to get paid for what we're doing. And it wouldn't be great to invest in queer community, invest in queer and trans community, invest in POC communities. That is how businesses can stay thriving, is through those regulars, is through that investment. It's interesting when we'll do a ticketed event and Andy's here, Andy Palamo is here. She's the first person to buy a ticket every single time. And she does that not just with my event, but with many. And because, you know, we are always spending money. So you have opportunities, and less so to be able to invest in these parties or these spaces or these programs that are curated by people who are really thinking through how to invest back in their community, who have mentioned up here charity, who have mentioned accessibility. And I'm going to be really honest, because I think we should talk about it. Are we holding Boys Town and all those bars to the same standards? Are we holding our commercial spaces to the same standards? We do that work, but we need to make money too, and we also want to pay our DJs and our the people who work on it, and our artists. And so you can't do that all very effectively unless you do have sponsorship without a ticket price. So it's a huge challenge for all of us to be able to say, we want to make this financially accessible, but we also want to pay our DJs because exposure is not currency. We want to be able to have a really nice flyer because, you know, aesthetic is important to us and our values. So I think it's a two-way street, and we have to go to those businesses and say, that's a really good point that was made about, you know, not having to reach a minimum, being able to shift it and say, this is the value, but you got to come with those receipts, and you got to cross your T's and dot your I's too, and be able to follow through, keep things in writing, and, you know, be true to your word. If you're making a commitment to someone, whether it is an artist that you're going to book or a DJ or, you know, to your community, stay true to it and be transparent. Let your community know that you are, you know, as Peach has done, they are donated $1,000. They announced that to their community. People want to support that. So I think that it has to be a two-way street between both the people that are investing in your community and then us behind the scenes to say, we're going to show up for you too.
I just wanted to say that I look at that quite different. Because I am a woman of color, it's not so easy for me. It's easy for for white women to go to different places and get those places. Now me, I had a hard time. So I would usually go to places that were just about to go out of business. So when I appeal to them, and I approach them, I have to come a different way. Because when they see, most of them, when they see the color of your skin, they're kind of have reservations. And then when I kind of give them a little history, and I usually have references, and I can kind of get them to give us at least one night, then that's how we kind of build a relationship. It was not easy because, first of all, I have to go with the barrier of my color, as well as I had to lie sometime and say that I was a sorority and that we were having a fundraiser and that it would be mostly women. And you know, how would your staff feel about us coming and different things like that. In terms of making money, I would make sure it was around the first of the month because a lot of people get paid. So I have to think in terms of my demographics, as well as a lot of women of color have families and children, and you have to think about their finances, and they have children, and they can't come out all the time. So I wouldn't have a party every week. We had parties like once a month or every other month, and I would make sure that it was in a nice location, lit with security, and easy accessible to public transportation, as well as being able to have free parking. So those are things I would take into consideration when I did my parties. So there are a lot of other variables that we had to take into consideration, and I always like to make money, so I made sure that we were at places where if I had to negotiate a certain price, I would also make something in terms of finances.
Excellent. Thank you all for I'm going to ask one more question for the whole group, and then if you have questions, hand them to Vivian, and we'll have a couple audience questions as well, having time for folks to mingle. One of the things we touched on a little bit is segments of the community. You know, Chicago is just like the rest of the world. It's racist and geographically divided on many different ways. But talk about if your goal has been to collaborate across different barriers within our community, many either success stories or failures, in trying to do that. Because as Pat said, Pat's parties were open to everybody, but the vast majority of white women didn't go. People who felt comfortable went, but it was majority African American women and some Latino. And there's been this whole history in Chicago of our bars reflecting that racism and division within our community. So if you have examples of collaborations that have worked or haven't worked, love to hear about that for the audience as well. We'll start with Jenae in the back.
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like when I started, I wasn't raised that way. Like, I wasn't raised to be segregated. It was like, yeah, you're a Belmont rat, but you could be any color to be a Belmont rat. See, you're the only person who knows what that is in this whole ass. Really? It's really only her? Okay. Thank you. You're special. But no, it wasn't about color so much as where you were and what time you were in. But LBC originally, no, it wasn't. And I knew I could count on my jock beans at some point. Like, so my jock beans were 7 people. They got their little team together. There's 7 people over there. I got my Gaysians. They're over there. They call themselves that, so don't be mad at me. Like, I have my POCs. I had everyone. Kaza used to come. Like everybody came to my events. And that was what it was. It was about the music, and I think we've all really touched on that, especially Castro. It really is about the music, and that's one thing that it's so interesting that people don't really attribute to the lesbian community. We are just as into the music as the gay boys are. Like, we have created so many, like, the people who go to Dinosaur every year, nobody knows who we are. Other than us, like Pat and I were at Mishfest every year listening to artists that y'all would have never known who they were. So it's really about the music with the lesbian community. Since we want the music, that was the name of the group. We want the music part. I just went deeper than I needed to. But
WWTMC. We want the music collection.
Yes, well, so you know, I don't know if you know, but Dinah Shore, before it was a cruise, was actually a record company. They produced records for lesbian artists that were coming out. When they were making enough money, they started going on trips, because who doesn't want to see these little guitar acoustic playing ladies on trips? It was only a few of us. So after that got a little bit popular, Lisa Vogel and a few other people started We Want the Music Land Cooperative, and so they started Mishfest. That went on for 40 years. Just stopped 4 years ago. So we have always been about the music part of it, and I know, I'm trying to. That was diversity. I could be talking about Cardi. Damn. Okay. I'll stop. It's fine. See, Renauda. This is why you should go to her parties, because they're more fun than mine. I just talk all the time. No, but literally, we've already been about diversity. We've always been about that. If you want people to come to your party, it really does tend to be music heavy oriented. Everyone here has gotten organizations from out of town. Everyone's got artists from out of town, and we've been able to bring in people before anyone's ever known them. It's there, Amsterdam, like Amsterdam, all those things. We're about the music. If you want to hear it, you can come. You can be diverse. You don't have to be so coordinated into your communities, and I think that everybody on the stage has proven that.
DJ Ken.
I want to add a little bit more. I changed the way I look at things today versus the way I looked at them when I was younger. I know we use the word segregation, a word that I kind of stopped using, because we really are not divided. We just follow our taste. For example, as a Latina woman, and I can tell you this right now, on the nights that I'm off, for example, I'm 24/7 music. I'm into about 50 genres of music and stuff. But if I'm gonna take my wife out dancing, she's like, "Do they play salsa?" And I'm like, "No, they don't play salsa." She goes, "Well, I don't want to." So it's like, okay, So I go, "Well, we can go to this straight clubs doing salsa." She goes, "I'm not going to the straight club," because she'll get stared at every night, or they feel it's okay to disrespect. And we can talk all night about things that occur. Now, the way I see things today is a little different. The club business is hurting all around Chicago, not just in our community. We see it more because our community is smaller in comparison to the heterosexual community. For example, in the late 90s, early 2000s, gay people could not touch a Friday or a Saturday. No promoters, nobody. They wouldn't give it to you. You'd have to go Wednesday or a Monday or I remember Cairo on Mondays and such and such places on Sundays and things of that nature. The club business is hurting us such in a way where I've kind of been operating in the north side, and I've dealt with a lot of the European clubs, which is not easy. There's a language barrier. You deal with a lot of things, and as they mentioned, I won't promise them a minimum. Whatever I come in, I show them pictures of my past events. I tell them a little bit about myself. I show them my page, etc., 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 and I tell them exactly how it's going to flow, because I've been doing it long enough to know it's going to flow. Up until the past year is when we started doing every other Friday. I save money on the DJ end because I am a DJ, so I just DJ myself. I try to bring other DJs. I have been searching for different type of DJs, but for my night, which we call Spanglish, you have to be very versatile as a DJ. Because, and I know many of my people do this, I can be jamming some Drake at that moment, and a girl come up to me, "Hey, play this, this, and that." Before she gets to her seat, I'm already transitioning into that song. I welcome requests, I make it about them. So it is by music. Because if I know if I want to hear, hip hop all night, I know where I'm gonna go. If I want to hear more dance or EDM or something, I know where I'm gonna go. But it really is about the music, because at my parties I have people from all walks of life. White, black, brown, purple, yellow, whatever, and everyone gets hugs, everyone gets kisses. I don't even support attitude in there. It's like everybody come in with a great energy, have a good time, we have enough stuff to deal with all week. It's like, sorry, now it's multiplying, and I see it, getting better. But with these clubs, like, I basically do no cover, just so I don't have the pressure of an overhead. And I'm blessed to have a family and friends that just really help me make it come together. And there's people in the community who have extended their help to me as well. That makes it happen. But it is very, very difficult because, a men's club can probably clock 10 grand at the bar in no time, but not in the women's, where it's true. And we do love to drink and party, but you know, we're a little bit more responsible and you know, things of that nature. I can count how many times I got that drunk. So yeah, that's what I see from where I'm standing, because I have friends that are residents in straight clubs, and straight clubs have been shutting down big time, and it is because of urban development, it is because of gentrification, taxes, etc., etc. I mean, most people don't even know that nightclubs can only buy liquor from 2 places in the city, and things of that nature. So, you know, everyone's hurting all around. We just feel it and see it a little more because we're a smaller part of the world than what they are.
Anybody on that question?
So it's all about music. We want to say some bachata, reggaeton with house and everything else and a little old school. That's what I do.
I wanted to say one other thing about diversity. Like I said, when I first started throwing parties, and they were, you know, private parties, I like to see the diverse group of people that came. So when I became a big part of the LGBTQ community here, what I would do is like, okay, I'm not only going to go to Augie's or to the Latino bars, I'm going to go everywhere and meet everybody, because I wanted to meet everybody. And not only women's events, I'm going to go to the men's events. And not only that, I'm going to go to HRC events. I'm going to go to Equality Illinois events. I'm going to go to Howard Brown events. And so when I was doing that, I can count on one hand how many Latino people were there. And that bothered me. You know, it's like, why? First of all, you know, what is it about these organizations that's not making the Latino community comfortable? And also, what is it about the Latino community that they don't feel comfortable attending these events? So little by little, I, you know, started going more and more to these events and bringing my friends. And I actually had people calling me, asking me, inviting me to their events, to their nonprofits, so that I would bring my Latino friends. I was being used basically to bring Latino people into, which was sad. It was a sad commentary. I did it because, you know, I wanted to introduce people to each other and events and situations, and say, hey, it's not just about going to the bar to dance salsa, which we all love to do, but hey, how about giving back to the community? Why don't you go to one fundraiser? You know, yeah, the tickets are $20 to get in, but that's how much you spend, you know, in the first hour on a cocktail. So I would have to, I tried to convince people in the Latino community to join me in fundraising events. And like I said, during that time, it wasn't happening. It wasn't happening. I remember the Coming Out for Cancer, LCCP at South Shore, which they had recently. The first time I went, it was a phenomenal event, all women. It's like wide open, beautiful space, but very few Latino people. And the more often that I would go to these events, I would invite my friends. I'm like, oh wow, this is great. But you know, I don't hear about that happening anymore. I think more and more people, the crowd is becoming more diverse, and I think that's wonderful. But back then, that's what we had to do. We had to try to coax people to do other things other than just hang out with the social crowd that they were comfortable with.
Okay, I'm going to start taking a couple questions from the audience, and you know, if people that haven't had a chance to talk as much, just jump right in. I'm trying not to pick on people. This one, you could take in either. I'm going to take two questions and combine them. One is that when new people come along, and Chicago is a very transient city, a lot of people move here for jobs and for school and things like that. They don't often feel very comfortable at an event they go to new. So talk about how you make new people feel welcome in your spaces, like tips on that. And then also how you make it with the U-Haul phenomenon of coupledom, if you do things that might especially attract couples. So either one of those two.
Oh yeah, I can jump on that. So when I see a woman who's by herself at an event, and I'll see her kind of like looking at people and kind of and trying to figure out who, you know, she wants to talk to someone, I always just go over and, you know, check them up. And I'll make sure to, you know, introduce them to someone else. So that's always an easy way to free drink. Yeah, well, not a free drink. They have the money. Yeah, so that's how I do that as far as when new people come in.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I was that person when I moved here, not knowing anyone. So I think that was a really big thing when we were, you know, creating Peach is to ensure that everyone felt comfortable. And I think this also slightly plays into diversity and the changing of the crowd. One thing we definitely noticed in the Peach team is always mentioned, specifically at our launch event, we saw a bunch of new faces that we had never seen before. And what I noticed when I had first moved here, I'd go into rooms and they all knew each other. And that's great, and that's community and everything, but at the same time, for a new person coming in, it's hard to interject or walk in without seeming like, I'm not hitting on you, I'm just trying to be friends with you. So that's just certain things that was a little difficult for me. So that's certain things that we do, we walk around, and again, the three of us, like, we had different friend groups in every single thing, so like, kind of now you see, like, our groups kind of start to come together a little bit, and us know similar people because of that. But it's the idea when they come to the event, you know, walking up to them, like Renauda was saying, you always know the ones that are kind of like going around and they're by themselves, right? And talking to them, saying, hey, how are you doing? Introducing it to someone that's nearby. But I think the idea that Peach is so diverse, meeting from different areas of the city, and you don't know who's all going to be in the room, helps a lot that you're not walking into a cliquey atmosphere.
Yeah, I think I can jump in that too. One of the newer faces in the scene was recent for me too to find that accessibility, and that's really what I try to bring with Lesbian is that accessibility to that space. So Flannel sees new people every single month. For a year, we've seen people where are they all coming from, and really providing that connection to the network. There's so much going on, I can't say it enough. And so, you know, in terms of answering the couples portion of the question, Lesbe did a Valentine's Day event that was targeting couples. You can really kind of diversify your programming to make it okay for couples to come to your events as well. Couples still like music too, and have earlier programming. We've also done drag king shows, which goes over really well with anybody, whether they're in a couple or not. A lot of these events are targeting single lesbians, but they don't have to with the programming that we can bring.
Couples or music?
So typically when B.BLYSS hosts events, we try to make sure that we introduce ourselves to almost every single person at our event. And for those people who we come across that are new, we try to introduce them to people. Just because we know that it's hard for them to navigate the space. So we try to at least get them introduced to some folks so that they know that this is someone who does this and this person does that. Just because it's hard if you're not sure. Once you say, hi, how are you? What's going on? How long have you been here? And then they're like, okay, you're going to walk away. And then what do I do? So we want to make sure that they're welcome in that way. And also as far as the couples thing, I think it really does have to do with putting together events, as you mentioned, that are going to speak to that audience. So we try to make sure that when we're doing things, if there's some food involved or tables, things like that, we try to couple tickets and try to do groups and things like that so that people can have an opportunity to work together and sit together and engage or have a date.
Along those lines, another question was about intergenerational programming, how that happens. Of course, we were all laughing before, us over 55ers. They're saying, yeah, 2 in the afternoon, perfect. But some people want to be out at 2 at night. So talk about if you've had successes in the intergenerational, and is that also really about the programming? You know, Amie, you bring in performers from different eras. Does that happen to affect who comes to it, or you know, what are the magical things that might be good to get intergenerational work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that if you have a diverse mix of the types of music, like it's hard to be everything for everybody. So if with an event like we have the luxury of being able to have different types of music during the same day, so they may not stay for the whole event, but at least they're trying to hit different segments. I mentioned families, families too with our family day. It's difficult to meet everybody's needs for sure, and the nature of our event. We've started a whiskey and wine and women tasting. Tasting party on the Friday of Pride Weekend, and we feel like it's a different crowd, which is great. So we're always trying to think of new things to attract different people. And you can have a young person that appreciates fine whiskey or an older person that appreciates rap music. So it's hard to say, but if you provide a little bit of everything, which we can do, with our event, it's not always possible with the other types of events, then it should lead to some successes and some fulfillment on the attendees' part.
I just got a couple more questions, and this one's definitely from an academic, so I'm going to try to pronounce these words correctly. In a world where queer, trans, people of color, folks and spaces are under attack and not visible, how have you as organizers combated the hegemonic white supremacy and decenter whiteness, class, and ability to make your spaces more inclusive? We talked a little bit about, I think, that, but are there more conscious things you're doing in these current political times to keep those spaces?
May I read the question? I think I have an answer. I just want to make sure I'm right because this deserves all the respect in the world. Shut up, I could drink and do this. I also work for one of those large wine companies. So we don't. We don't do enough. I'm not gonna front. I think you do a lot. I think you're trying. You are, especially with Elle coming up. I think you're doing a lot. I think a lot of us are, it's hard. It's really hard to be women in this world, and it's kind of crazy that you're looking at us, and I'm seeing so many women of color up on this stage. And if you think about it, the people who have been throwing the lesbian events are this diverse and this so much women of color. This shit has been hard for us for a long time. I've seen other people do it longer than I have. I've seen other people get into it since I've been inside. I think what we've been doing, I will say, I don't think it's enough, but I will say bathrooms. I think that every single person on this stage, whenever they throw an event, there are gender neutral bathrooms. I know that for a fact. I'm not saying that's enough. But I will say that every single person here has done that. We respect everybody. We try to. When we're bringing in vendors, we're looking at accessibility. We're looking at if the vendors can even get into those spaces. We're looking at vendors that, we're looking at spaces, we're counting out spaces that might be cheaper, but we don't care because we want the extra accessibilities. And I think that's something that we all look into. So we might be able to save a few bucks, but I don't think we would. I literally don't. I think everybody up here was spending extra money to be like, no, I need an accessible space. I also need an accessible gender neutral bathroom. With the whole white supremacy and decanting whiteness thing, that's a lot, boo. You got it? Because that last sentence, I feel like I got the first two sentences, but have you been reading these last two sentences?
Reading while you
Cool. See? Over the shoulder, boulder holder.
I think we can focus on two things. One is booking. Booking of DJs, of performers. That's something that we've always centered with Peach, and that's something that you will consistently see. You will see trans performers, you will see queer women, you always will see women. And so every lineup has always been like that. And luckily, we have had the opportunity where most DJs haven't performed more than twice at Peach. Last series, I think besides DJ Lady D, Karen and the K, they did the finale, but it was different every single time. So I think it's the idea of that is being able to pay them first, and then give them that platform to do that, which also helps because when you see that type of DJ, when you see that, it also brings in the crowd as well, it brings in the community, feeling it's a safe space as well. Another thing I want to say is calling out some of the very explicit parties that are being very explicit about their marketing and what they're doing, like the Party Noirs, like the Energies that are they're calling out, this is the space for you. And I love that that's happening, and making sure that we're also supporting them as well. I know specifically for Peach, 2/3 of the team, we don't necessarily explicitly call it a POC party because it is a POC party. So that's why, but we focus on other things like booking and even the marketing. And when you see us, we're posting certain things. It's showing that diversity of everything. So I think, supporting POCs is like the biggest thing. Support parties that are actually run by POCs. That's my name.
Matt, did you want to say something? Matt? You want to say something?
Basically, my particular focus is on, because we were so limited in terms of places to go, my focus in terms of the demographics of who came to my party were women of color. But I also was involved in so many activities within the community because I was an activist around so many white women. I invited everybody. So I just had a diverse crowd most of the time. In terms of, I don't know that last question about white, what was it? White, I included everybody. I didn't want to, listen, I didn't turn anybody away from the door. If you wanted to come and party, my thing was a party. My passion was come to the party. I don't give a damn if you pink, blue, or purple. Just come to the party and have a good time. That's all I was concerned about.
So let's do a final kind of wrap up if folks have some final thoughts. One of the things I would say is you're not going to be happy in every space. Don't judge a whole community by one space, and don't judge one promoter by one party you went to that you didn't have a good time. Right. The thing is, yes, your ex might be there, been there, done that. You've got to sometimes move around this community to feel part of this community. I've experienced all the hell on earth this community has to offer. There's some ugly stuff when your family, which is this community, treats you badly. It's like your family's treating you badly. I've been through all of that. It's still worth it in the end to stick with that family. You just might need to navigate a different door. But support these promoters and the promoters that are in the audience, what they're doing. Where you spend your money is a political act. And what they're doing is political. Creating a space that's safe for us is political in any day and age, but it certainly is in this. So someone wanted you all to get together to do one huge party a year, but besides that, tell us what's next up and how people can find you.
I'll start it off, but I also want to kind of piggyback from that because I think that's so important. If you have an issue at any of the parties, make sure you talk to the promoter. Because the worst thing ever is that you have a bad experience at our party and then you decide not to come back, right? Or you take to social media or you tell other people. Here's the biggest thing is if you have an issue at our party where someone's having a bad day and they had an attitude with you, right? Do not let that person win. That's the type of, probably the energy that we don't want in that space. So let producers have the ability to address those issues and then come back. Show us that you want to come back. Because nothing's worse than you have a bad experience, you tell your friends, and then what happens? This party is for this group and not for this group. That's a big thing. And then in regards to, not everything's going to be perfect, but allowing us to address issues and ensuring that, now if we don't address it, okay, but I think everyone on this panel here has great intentions, that if you came to us, we would fix it as well. So I wanted to really piggyback off that, sorry. But Peach in general, we're in the middle of our series that kicked off April 28th. It's the element series going through air, earth, water, and fire. It's supposed to be the symbolism of our community in general. We're so excited about it. We're really focused on design this year. If you went to our launch party, it was 4,000 blooms. It was crazy. So we have water coming up that is going to be at Whiskey Business, June 30th. We have another event July coming up, which is Earth, which we'll be focusing on more community and speakers and such. That's going to be at Emil Bachhaus, a Japanese tea house, and in Mansion State in Rogers Park. And then Earth, we are going uptown as well. We're working with Mason Hall, so it's going to be very symbolic. I thought that was. So yeah, that's what's going on with Peach. Support, find us at peachparty.com, Peach online, Instagram. That's Hannah. So if you ever have any questions or anything, Hannah Vivi, also she's repping the bar tip. Morgan back there, if you ever have any questions, and myself as well, hit us up, peach@blackbirdagency.com. Any questions, concerns, problems, hit us up.
Let's just go around.
What we have coming up is June filled with a lot of activities. On June 2nd, Saturday, we are doing a boat cruise with Tops, benefiting charity. And then we have our pre-Pride events throughout June after Midsummer Fest. We'll be doing a party in Andersonville after Midsummer Fest ends. All are welcome, of course. And then, of course, Pride weekend. Friday night, our whiskey, wine, and women tasting at Reza's. We've got the private part of Reza's. And then Saturday and Sunday with our family day. And then our flagship party and then our post-parade party.
I'm gonna let Alma talk about what's next for Clandestina. But next week, wherever I'm working in, whatever space I'm working in, I want to make it accessible for strong women and queer women. We were able to host BrunchRemixed at City Winery. I hope some of you were there and had a good time and felt safe and included. And Thursday, this year is, everybody knows I'm an old school hip hop head, and Clandestina brought Moni Love to Chicago, which was one of my favorite parties of all time. Next Thursday, She's Crafty, the all-female Beastie Boys tribute band, is going to do a tribute to the Hello Nasty album, which is the 20-year anniversary. And in honor of MCA, we are raising money for Gilda's Club Chicago and another not-for-profit that just got their 501c3, which is Chicago Period Project, which provides all sorts of feminine products to homeless women. If you come to that show, it's 5:30. It's on the Riverwalk. It's on the river between State and Dearborn. It is a free show. If you buy a cocktail or raffle ticket, all that money is going towards those two organizations. It is going to be a really good time. And for those of us who like to go to bed early, we will be done by 8:30 because the music has to be done by 8:30 on the Riverwalk. So I hope to see you out there. And if you want to get a hold of us at Clandestina, you can email us at clandestinashy@gmail.com or follow us on social media at clandestinashy. We will be, I know that we've been gone for a while, we've been a little bit busy, but we will be continuing to try to do some pop-ups and hopefully some collaborations. And I'll have Alma talk about the next plan, which we can't announce the date yet, but it's exciting.
So as far as Clandestina is concerned, Brooke and I are working really hard to do a Clandestina Latina. So it will be a Latino night. Of course, everyone's welcome, and details are to come. We'll be announcing everything on social media. But we're still intent on bringing events and a safe space for everybody here, and we hope you continue to support us. Thank you.
I have 14 events during this week, the next 4 weeks. So, Slow Jams for Queer Fam is at the Whistler in Logansport. It's free every month. It's next Thursday. Audio Jack is the resident DJ, and Benita Appleblant will be guesting next week. Get there early is usually the vibe. But then at the end of the month for IML Weekend, which is International Mr. Leather, Slow-Mo Party is collaborating with a group called Futurehood, which is Io Perdigo and Mr. Wallace. And we are presenting IML. It is spelled I-A-M-E-L-L-E. L is she. IML for IML Weekend. And our intention with that is to break the binary of IML Weekend, both the presentation and gender and identity. Yes! So I'm so excited. And it's on the main stage at Metro. And J.D. Sampson from The Tigre is headlining. A lesbian, legendary lesbian DJ. So, we're really excited about that. That is late. It is 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., so just sleep, be the vampire, then get up and come. But I really hope y'all will come out for that because IML is incredibly cis, white, gay, male dominated. That's cool, but like we're all part of Leather and King. We're all part of BDSM. We should all be welcome, whether it's your first foray or introduction or whether it's something that's really a big part of your life. So that's at Metro on the main stage this Sunday of IML Weekend, and it's going to be a really good time. And then I'm going to be programming Queer the Pier, which is Pride on Navy Pier, the Saturday of Pride weekend, which will be really fun, and it's going to be an homage to queer club culture through the decades from the 70s to today. Adam Nessis and Friends is doing a big cover band covering queer anthems from the 70s to today. Coco and Darling Shear are going to be doing a queer club fashion show on the pier. I haven't talked about this publicly at all, so I hope you'll come down for that. It's free. And then I have a studio that is available for both trade and sliding scale for queer, POC, and women and femme-identified folks in communities called Reunion in Humboldt Park. And we do our Pride and Power programming, which is mostly free. We'll have a Queer Care Day, which is a day of free care for people in the community. We have a bunch of other stuff going on for that. And then there's a bunch of other stuff, but I don't want to take up too much space or time. You can follow Slow Mo Party on Instagram or say hey to me afterward. The last thing I will share is starting a new party speaking to the interests of earlier evening and weekend things called Old Gold Grown Music for Grown People. And grown is a state of mind, so that's any age welcome, and that's going to be way down at the Ace Hotel. They have 2 rooftops, and it's from 4 to 9 p.m. It's a tea party on the first Sundays of every month. That's free as well. And that starts in church. And that's only half of it, but, talk to me after something more. Thank you.
Mine is real quick because I'm retired.
Hey!
After 30-something years, I'm not doing anything but supporting all these beautiful women.
Our next event is BrunchRemixed After Party. We're working with Equality Illinois, partnering with them on their brunch. June 3rd, we're going to have a fabulous drag show curated by myself and my business partner, Robin Hardrick. And it's going to be 6 curated cocktail stations with breakthrough beverage. They're going to be doing some really groovy stuff with the cocktails. And then we'll have a DJ Zell that will be performing, so you guys can dance and all that good stuff. And then we have also Violin for women that we're doing the Pride Kickoff event with here, where you currently at, on June 8th. And that is from 6 to 9 p.m.
Everyone pretty much just either calls me DJ Castro or Castro. Where you can find us on Facebook. Just look up Castro Entertainment Chicago, and that'll lead you to our Spanglish page. We had to name it that because of the changes Facebook made. And that's it. We play a little bit of everything. We're real big on sing-alongs. We're very friendly. Yeah, no, we'll pick a song from the 70s, 80s, and I get everybody in there singing. I always say, come out, release. That's what we go out for, to feel comfortable around people just like us. Have a little drink, sing some jokes, hopefully not get into any arguments. And that's it. Castro Entertainment Chicago. Thank you.
You can find Lesbian events online, lesbianevents.com, Facebook, Lesbian events, Instagram, Lesbian events. Just look for Lesbian events. Flannel Friday is going strong, first Friday every month. Mary's Attic. I'm committed to keeping that free, so it's a gateway to the community, and it's going to stay that way. Lezbe, we're really looking to start getting into the drag scene, so look for some drag king shows coming out.
Well, B.BLYSS is actually going through transition because 2 of my partners have moved on. One, Tara Honeywell, is relocating to London to study culinary arts. So we're actually going to be starting a pop-up dinner series and also a mixology series, and we are starting programming here at the center called the Be.At program. We actually piloted the Be.At program last year, where we were working with the youth. Leaky Epstein, who's one of our volunteers for that program. We're teaching children and youth here, as well as the adults, about creative writing, resume writing skills. We're also going to be doing photography with social intelligence and moving forward into a Be.At business series as well. We're professionals, so we're moving more into the community and really trying to target helping with the empowerment of economic development and growing as a person.
I'm the ratchet one. No, I feel like I'm the ratchet one. Well, Lala, I can't announce it. I really, really want to announce it. We have a really amazing POC person coming to Berlin for Lollapalooza, who is also playing at Lollapalooza. So if you'd like to go to anything like that, our sideshow is the next thing I'm producing at Berlin. It will be the Thursday before Lolla. We really work really hard to get all like a whole POC lineup, and it's kind of dope. And I'm sweating, like I can't say it. But otherwise, I support everybody here. I'm always at everybody's thing, and also I'm very forgivable with like my credit card, so I'll always buy you a drink and listen to what you have to complain about. So, thank you.
Thank you all. I think we got everybody. Just a couple final notes. You know, most of our bars used to be owned by the mafia. Most of them used to have to pay off the mob and the cops alternatingly. And they do have to buy things from certain vendors that, Words and others. It's very difficult. So help them be successful. And my plea to you is to get us your calendar listings, because we don't want to only have people know who you know already. And so Wednesday times, our role is to make sure people know about your stuff too. 3 to 4 weeks ahead of time, please. And we will do our best. You can find us on all sorts of social media as well. It's free. The newspaper is free. It will not be around forever, just like these promoters won't be around forever, unless you support our advertisers and you're part of the paper. So I've been doing it 34 years as of next week. I hope to do it at least another 2 years. And I am 55, but I still love to dance too. So thank you all for coming tonight and get a chance to meet some new people. Thank you.